Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars action figure review. Today we're going to be taking a look at another figure from the Black Series 6-inch line, and in this review we are looking at Wedge Antilles. Now this is a really nice figure and a welcome addition to the 6-inch Black Series line. I think a lot of fans and collectors for quite some time now have been clamouring for not just a Wedge Antilles figure but more Rebel pilots in the Black Series, and this figure certainly doesn't disappoint, even if it is a little bit familiar, and I'll get on to why that is in just a little bit. This figure is very nice but not without its flaws, and again we'll touch base on those throughout the review. But before we do, I'd like to extend a massive thanks and a shout out to the guys at Hio who were kind enough to supply this figure for a review. And if you want to check out what Hio are all about, there's a link down below in the video description. Now, before we jump into the figure, as always, we're going to take a look at the packaging that Wedge comes in, and once again we do get that really nice Black Series packaging with this figure. In the bottom corner there, you've got a really nice illustrated image of Wedge by Gregory Titus. You've got Wedge Antilles' name down in the bottom corner, and at the top of the box the Black Series logo. On the side you'll see this is number 102 in the Black Series 6-inch line, and on the reverse side you've got that image of Wedge once again accompanied by a brief description of the character. So standard stuff in terms of packaging. So now let's take a look at the figure itself, and as I said, this one is really nice but it's not without its flaws. Now, as I said, I'm really excited that Hasbro are finally giving us more Rebel pilots in the Black Series 6-inch line, and I think Wedge was a great starting point. However, there are some things that I would have done differently if I was the one putting this figure together. Now, you may think from first glance, there's not a whole lot you can do in terms of shaking up the overall look of a Rebel pilot's flight suit, and you'll be right in saying that. However, as you can see, this figure does use the same body as Luke Skywalker in his X-Wing pilot gear, and that's a little bit disappointing to me. Not in terms of overall aesthetic, because as you can see, he looks identical to how Wedge appears in the movies, but it's just little details about this one that really bug me, and as I said, I would have done differently if I were the one putting this figure together and designing it. Little things like obviously Wedge and Luke are not the same height, so when you display these two on a shelf together they're exactly the same. And also, of course, Wedge doesn't have any use for a hook on his belt for a lightsaber hilt, which is still prevalent here on this figure, which is a little bit disappointing, but it's nothing too major. I would have really liked to have seen a brand new sculpt for this figure, just so that it doesn't look identical to the Luke figure that we already have on our shelf. But again, in terms of overall look, there's not much else you can do in terms of design for a Rebel flight suit. So from that perspective, it's fine and it's more than acceptable. But if Hasbro are to put out other Rebel pilots in the 6-inch line, I really hope that they utilise a brand new sculpt for those future figures. Characters such as Biggs Darklighter, of course, they're a little bit taller than Luke and Wedge. Jake Porkins, of course, is a little bit proportionately different to Luke and the other Rebel pilots, and Blue Leader, General Merrick, all that sort of stuff. It'd just be nice to see brand new and unique sculpts for those figures going forward. But as I said, in terms of other Rebel pilots being added to the 6-inch line, this is a great starting point. And in terms of the rest of the figure, again, it doesn't disappoint. It's a really nicely put together one. So obviously with this figure being somewhat familiar, you will of course be aware of the articulation he comes packed with if you already own the Luke Skywalker figure. He does feature a ball joint at the head, he's got hinges at the shoulders and at the elbows, hinges at the wrists, a ball joint at the torso, hinges at the hips. However, the flight harness does restrict a little bit of that movement. You've got swivels at the upper thigh, although on my sample they are a little bit tight. You've also got a double joint in the knee and a hinge and a rocker at the ankle. So great articulation, that's not to be sniffed at. But again, it's pretty familiar for those who already have the Luke figure. Now in terms of accessories, he does come with a standard Rebel Alliance blaster pistol, which again, nicely sculpted, nicely painted. And he also features a removable helmet, which I've got to say is probably one of my favourite aspects of this figure. I love the markings. I think Hasbro have really nicely applied the decals on the helmet. It's nicely weathered. and really looks the part. So I'm really impressed with the helmet itself. Again, any opportunity to add more Rebel pilots with these unique markings on their helmets to my collection, I'm going to jump at the chance to do so. You've got that translucent orange visor at the front, of course, as well. Now the helmet itself can be removed, and underneath that does reveal a brand new head sculpt, and I've got to say this one is really well done. Obviously, since Hasbro have started to utilise the photoreal face printing technology, their head sculpts have just been absolutely phenomenal. But in terms of overall likeness, I think this is probably one of the better ones that Hasbro have put out. It's absolutely 100% dead on to Dennis Lawson, who is the actor who plays Wedge in the original trilogy, and in his recent cameo in The Rise of Skywalker. But obviously this particular figure is based on Wedge's appearance in the original trilogy. So you've got that 70s haircut going on, which looks really cool, nicely sculpted, and of course the face sculpt is very nice and is enhanced by that photoreal tech. So definitely impressed with the head sculpt, and again, it's one of the saving graces, along with the helmet, of this figure. It's definitely a really cool one to add to the collection. Again, I really hope that we see some more Rebel pilots added to the 6-inch Black Series line in the future. I'm really looking forward to a Biggs Darklighter, and I think even more so, a Blue Leader from Rogue One would be a really nice addition, not just to the 6-inch line, but the vintage collection 3 3/4 inch as well. There's a ton of possibilities there. So again, really cool figure, and if you're a fan of Rebel pilots, this is going to be one that you're going to want to add to the collection. For me personally, I was really excited to add this one to my collection, just because my Return of the Jedi shelf is looking a little bit thin, and it's not really 100% clear whether this figure is based on Wedge's appearance in A New Hope or in Return of the Jedi, so I've added him to my Episode 6 shelf, and he looks great on there. So a really nice figure, highly recommended, and if you get the opportunity to pick him up, highly recommend you do so. So that is going to do it for this review on Wedge Antilles from the Black Series 6-inch line. Who doesn't want to stand up? Have we got him? I don't want him to fall over. There we go. Really cool figure, and I really hope you've enjoyed this review, and I'll be back with some more very soon. Until then, as always, thank you for watching, keep collecting, and may the Force be with you.